Hello, everyone. Welcome to History Tea Time Chat Live. Just trying to get Instagram to go as well. It either will or it won't. It doesn't matter to you. Okay, I'm streaming live on YouTube and Facebook at least. Hopefully, Instagram will go live soon as well. And today, I thought we would have a chat about Queen Elizabeth I's coronation procession and just sort of a general chat around it. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Hello, hi Becky, hi Beverly, new member, thank you very much. And I've had a great day already. I have been interviewing Illyri Lynn. She wrote this book. This is just one of her books on Tudor fashion. She's also written on Tudor textiles and underwear. And I've just finished my interview with her. So that will be available to patrons, and patrons put some fantastic questions to her, submitted some great questions to her. So I asked her about poison dresses and fashion trends and all sorts of amazing questions. Anyway, they make up the Patreon length interview that will be available to patrons on Sunday. If you're not a member already, patreon.com/British history. I'm sure you will love it. If you're not a member of Patreon and it's not your time to be, that's absolutely fine. The interview without the Patreon questions will be available a week on Sunday. So anyway, so I've been doing that. It's great. So everyone can hear me. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining. I can see people joining on Instagram as well. Brilliant. We've got it running. I'm trying this new setup because I want to just be able to look at one camera, and hopefully then it also looks better and looks like I'm actually paying attention to you all, because I am. So Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. And like I say, today I want to have a little meander, a little chat around the coronation of Elizabeth I. So it's already been a history packed day for me already, interviewing Illyri Lynn, or Illyri. I need to ask her how to pronounce her name, but anyway, and that followed on from a wonderful book club that we had on Sunday night. We were discussing Tracy Borman's book on Elizabeth I and Anne Boleyn, their relationship. It's a great discussion because Tracy's book looks at the relationship, obviously in life, but was very short. Elizabeth I was only 2 years old when her mother Anne Boleyn was executed. We're going to come back to their story in a moment, talking about Elizabeth's coronation. But there was themes running through. What did Anne do for Elizabeth while she was alive? And then how Elizabeth used emblems, how she employed Boleyn relatives and all sorts of things. And we had a great discussion about it and about the book itself and the writing and how readable it was. That was great. By the way, if you join Patreon, you have access to the recordings of the book club meetings. And if you can't make a book club, you can obviously watch back the meeting and comment it and whatever. Afterwards, we've still got a discussion going about something to do with it. The next book is The Palace by Gareth Russell. This is 500 years worth of history at Hampton Court Palace. Turns out quite pivotal in a whole heap of national and international events. And so this is a fascinating book, absolutely wonderful. It's Gareth Russell, which means it's not only do you feel mighty clever and well informed after you've read it, but he manages to write in a style that you get all the information without ever feeling like you can't take it anymore or like it's difficult to read. It never ever difficult to read. It's brilliant. Whoop whoop. Gareth, Becky says. So this is our meeting. Next book club meeting will be the 10th of March. It's a Sunday. Always on a Sunday, 7 p.m. UK time, where you do the math for wherever you are. We had a great time on Sunday night. But anyway, there you go. That's that. Next week, before I forget, I'm not going to be here. I am traveling, looking at, investigating, doing familiarization visits with hotels and historic destinations. If you want to, well, please follow me on whatever social media, and I will probably Instagram mainly, Facebook possibly, where I'll be sharing where I'm going and what I'm doing. If you're in Patreon, I will be giving you some behind the scenes information about why I am where I am and what tours I'm looking to be putting on, which include the destinations that I am going to. So there you go. There's another reason to join my Patreon. But that's next week. For this week, we're going to talk about Elizabeth I's coronation. We've just gone past the anniversary of it, hence talking about it. So Elizabeth I was crowned on the 15th January 1559. Now, of course, she'd come to the throne on the 17th of November 1558 when her sister, half-sister Mary I had died. She was at Hatfield House and she got the message. She, interestingly, didn't look to have her coronation particularly on any saint's day or any holy day, which would have been the norm. She decided to consult her astrologer, Dr. John Dee, who looked at the charts and decided when the heavens were going to predict that she should have her coronation. Of course, the date of the coronation is significant. It sort of sets the tone, the premise, the hopes for not just the date does, but for the reign. You know, is it you're looking for maximum good luck. It's like if you're choosing any, you know, your wedding day or something, you know, you're looking for like maximum good luck, hopefully, and longevity to come out of that. So yeah, so she gets she picks her coronation date to be the 15th of January 1559. January is a slightly odd date, maybe not, maybe it's just whenever, but she's 2 months after and then chooses January, which in England, especially in the Tudor period, actually, because they're going through a mini ice age at this point, believe it or not, they you know, you kind of think weather could have called a halt to it, but no, she's fine. Now, there's a number of things that happen on the run up to the coronation. So the coronation itself is on the 15th of January, but that's a ceremony inside Westminster Abbey. It's obviously the crowning ceremony. It's where she is anointed by God. It's interesting in its own right for it being the first. So her sister Mary's Catholic, and Elizabeth is coming and saying, "I don't want the Catholic ceremony," but all the bishops are still in place. So all the bishops are still Catholic, and there's an argument over the raising of the Eucharist. Anyway, maybe we'll come back to that. But the day before the coronation ceremony at Westminster Abbey, which is obviously behind closed doors, it's for the upper nobility, visiting ambassadors, whoever. The day before the procession, the coronation procession, is a public affair. And so this is sort of relationship set up between the monarch-to-be and her people in the capital city. The City of London is so it's still, as it is now, the financial capital, the capital of jurisdiction, judicial, should I say? Is that the right? So law and order. Politics is Westminster, as it still is today. But of course, in the City of London, you have the Tower of London, and whoever controls the tower controls the city, controls the country. The Tower of London, established in the time of by William the Conqueror and built on. The White Tower, as we know it, is Henry III. Anyway, so it's a fortress palace, or palace fortress, whichever way around you want to say it. And having control of it is important. Now, Elizabeth, of course, I'll come back to that. So she stays at the Tower of London on the night of the 13th of January, ready for her procession on the 14th of January, excuse me, which is going to go from the Tower around some of the streets in London and out at Fleet Street and out of the city and on to Westminster. The account gives us the detail of what happens in the city. So I actually don't know, haven't checked, want to ask someone as soon as I can. What happens after they leave Fleet Street? Is it simply a a procession that continues down to Westminster, um, where Elizabeth would spend then the night before her actual coronation ceremony at the Abbey? Um, on the night of the 13th, when she's staying at the Tower of London, there are 11 nights of the bath created. That was tradition. And it does include a bath ceremony. Now, with Mary, uh, one of her gentlemen actually conducts ceremony, and I'm trying to remember who does it on behalf of Elizabeth. But anyway, 11 nights of the bath are created. So the morning of the 14th, the procession is going to link it's going to literally physically link her to the Tower of London and the Tower of London to Westminster. They're her two seat centers of power, if you like. So the Tower of London is your like military and sort of well, yeah, stronghold. It's like I say, goes back to the Win the Conqueror. So you've got continuity there. If you include that in the ceremonies, and of course, remember Elizabeth is coming to the throne as the daughter of Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII. She was delegitimized by her own father. Nobody thought she would be queen, of course. When Henry VIII dies, his son becomes Edward VI. But he gets ill repeatedly and in a fairly short space of time and dies. And then his half sister, well, we could go into the whole Jane Grey Mary thing, but that's a different story for a different day. Mary the First, so all the half siblings in turn, Edward, then Mary the First becomes queen, and then Mary dies without issue, despite having married Philip II of Spain. She's very likely to have had some sort of condition or tumour which prevented her from getting pregnant and carrying live children. And then Elizabeth becomes queen on her death. She is not at any point during that time legitimised. So when Elizabeth comes to the throne, she's still technically a bastard child of Henry VIII. I mean, add to that the fact she's a woman, and that's not supposed to happen. It's all very interesting. And the coronation and the coronation procession, therefore, just always important. This time, just immeasurably important. The City of London are going to show their support for Elizabeth. Probably learnt by now it's best to just go with the flow, go with whoever's there. That's the one you show loyalty to. And equally for her to be seen, and for her, and she gets a very good write-up. You know, she stops at one point to hear a child speak a poem. After her actual coronation ceremony, it's remarked upon by a foreign ambassador, excuse me, I can't remember who, that she smiled too much at the crowds. But she can make this connection, this direct connection with her subjects. Yes, in London only, I suppose, although you would have had crowds most definitely, like you would today, traveling into the city and into the wider area in order to try and see the Queen, be a part of the festivities. Money was given out as part of part of the procession, and so you might even get some cash. So this was an incredible opportunity for Elizabeth to show what kind of queen she was going to be and make that connection with her people. So it is it is emblematic on so many different levels. What kind of queen she's going to be, what kind of person she actually is, whilst being human, also showing that she is divine. She is she is closer to God than everyone else. She has this connection, this position. She's been put there by God. Um, so she starts off from the Tower of London. Now, like I say, the night before she's stayed at the Tower of London. The royal lodgings, the apartments where she would have stayed the night before, were significant to Elizabeth in a harrowing way. They were They no longer exist. So you can look at old drawings of the Tower of London and see them, but they no longer exist. Those apartments, you can read about them in Houses of Power, actually, in Simon Thurley's book, Houses of Power, which we did in book club last year, actually. Henry VII did a lot of building at the Tower, but Henry VIII refurbished these royal lodgings, which were close to where the White Tower is. Well, we're definitely close to the White Tower, between the White Tower and the curtain wall, which is on the riverside. Henry VIII had those refurbished, ready for Anne Boleyn's coronation. Anne Boleyn had her own coronation in 1533. Henry had already had his coronation ceremony, of course, when he became king. And he had a joint coronation ceremony with his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. They had been married, and then the coronation. So the wedding, that's a bit of an aside, to Catherine of Aragon was, in fact, all of Henry's weddings were in private. Probably the first time, because there was a coronation ceremony coming up. That was the biggie. That was the big one. So when he marries Anne Boleyn, she gets her own coronation ceremony. She's already visibly pregnant with the future Elizabeth I. And she stays in the royal apartments at the Tower of London, and she has a procession to Westminster. And all's very happy. All's very lovely. Henry VIII at this point also puts the famous onion domes on the four corners of the White Tower at the Tower of London. They were there for Anne Boleyn's coronation. Less than 3 years later, just about 3 years later, just less than, Anne Boleyn is taken back to the Tower of London as prisoner. And of course, she is executed in the Tower on the 19th of May, 1536. She stays at those apartments during her incarceration there. Elizabeth, her daughter, knows this, but Elizabeth herself had been kept prisoner in those same apartments during the reign of her half-sister. So it is purely, really, I think, because of this requirement, necessity to show this is continuity, this is legitimacy, I have control, and this is just another person in the same role, and I'm going to do it really well. But so she cannot miss out the Tower of London part. She can't just stay there, start off from there, and she needs to stay there the night before, take control, be in situ, despite the fact that the Tower of London has all these horrific memories for her. And indeed, during her reign, she uses the Tower of London very, very little, and it goes into disrepair. By the time James I of England, James VI of Scotland comes down, the Great Hall, which again had been refurbished, ready for her, Elizabeth's mother's coronation, it was so dilapidated that there was a tarpaulin, whatever the Tudor equivalent to tarpaulin is, over the roof. So the tower is symbolic. It's not that Elizabeth's particularly enjoying the being there, as we might visit today and feel like, yeah, we're at the Tower of London. Didn't really hold those kind of feelings for Elizabeth at all. So So the 13th that she's created 11 Nights of the Bath, she stays at the Tower of London, and then the 14th is a procession, like I say. Yes, Jenna says, I remember hearing something about how Elizabeth rarely went to the Tower of London during her reign. Yeah, absolutely. She didn't feel, not that she didn't feel it was useful. There was no, there's various uses of the Tower of London. It was used as a palace, but actually Henry VIII hadn't used it very much as a place to stay. By this point, well, so Henry VII would have used, he preferred Richmond, Greenwich he built, or yeah, Westminster. And then Henry VIII also builds Whitehall. Westminster's burnt down and sort of half in use by that point. The tower isn't very comfortable. So it's more that symbology of, is that the right word? Of the tower. And just as an aside as well, Elizabeth at the time of her accession is, linking back her family tree to everywhere, actually, everywhere and anywhere, right back to Adam and Eve, but goes through Julius Caesar as well. So she and London, of course, not to go too off tangent, has Roman roots. So the tower is significant, even if she's not fond of it. In reality, it holds much significance. So she does her bit in terms of cementing her with that place. Yeah, so there we are. So that, hopefully that explains that. We have a written account of the procession. I have a map of London. Oh, it's behind me there on my shelf, from 1520. And I have been able to map out, sort of see where the route went. So if you're in my Patreon, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a short video on that. I might have already done it before. I've got, anyway, tingling memory that might be the case. But we have had a lot of new patrons. I've had a lot of new patrons join over the last year or so. So I will happily do that again, including Kerry. I need to say a shout out to Kerry, who's our latest new patron. But anyway, so in Patreon, I'm going to do a little thing on that map and show you the route that she went. And you can follow it in part today. And that's my next job. I want to overlay the Tudor map with the map today. So look out for that if you're in my Patreon. But yes, we have a written account. I'm going to show you this book because you can, I think, still get hold of this. And this puts it in. So the Queen's Majesty's Passage, edited and by Germaine Walkentin. I think I got this secondhand. It's really good. And in there is the account of the procession and the pageants which were involved. There's also history about processions. So I think it's really good. So that was written, by Richard Mulcaster, printed by Richard Tottle. And what's also interesting about that account is not just that we have an account and it's really interesting and useful, of course, it's that it was produced super quick. It was being distributed within 9 days, I think it was, after the coronation, that an account of it is being printed and is being distributed. And part of the payment for Richard Mulcaster it includes that he will provide a copy for Elizabeth. So it is tantalizing and exciting to think that Elizabeth could have read the account herself as well. And it is written in a way, and I wouldn't expect anything else actually, but that Elizabeth comes across very well in it. We'll get into it in a bit more detail in a second. So we have this coronation procession. She is obviously a female ruler. She has never been legitimized. Her sister Mary, of course, so Elizabeth isn't the first crowned queen, her sister Mary was. Her sister Mary also, by the way, was the first one to give a kind of speech as to be the mother, married to and the mother of her subjects in a speech at Guildhall. But anyway, um, uh, so so the whole procession really they were always geared towards the fact that the monarch is going to be a man. So it was displays of military capability, military leadership, and now you've got this young single woman. There needs to be a different approach, all the while hammering home the legitimacy uh, of of Elizabeth. So um, for now, I suppose we look back on everything in her reign, and we know that she ruled for sort of 45 years and was Gloriana, and the propaganda machine did its job, did its work based on Elizabeth's own behaviour and abilities. But what had been so in the procession, what had been used as the merits and the merits of the Queen Consort were hyped up for the Queen Regnant. So Elizabeth's virgin status, we know she goes on to maintain that, but this is, her authority is her virtue. What else did I want to say about it before I go on to what is the actual some of the pageants? Oh, I was struggling with that word then. So the City of London, what's interesting is the city, or this processional route, becomes a stage, and many of the pageants there's 5 pageants, and they are situated at conduits, so like water fountains. And they're looking at, like I say, raising the monarch to be she needs to be at a level which is accessible and yet above her subjects. Like I said earlier, she is the closest thing to the divine on earth for them. The themes of the procession and the pageants are all sort of moral and political. The religious, not so much, which is interesting. Obviously, bearing in mind that you've had Henry her father break with Rome, then her half brother Edward come in and try and go strong and hard for Protestantism, and then her half sister Mary come in and want to go strong and hard back the other way to Catholicism, and Elizabeth comes in much more careful. She has definite ideas in terms of ideas as in what she will and will not tolerate. She doesn't please everyone by doing this in any way, shape, or form. Hard reformers don't like that she's kept any sort of processional ceremony in terms of processing to church, for instance. But she's very adamant that she's not going to have the raising of the Eucharist at the coronation. And the bishop, who eventually I think did do the coronation at the Christmas time before she becomes queen, but she's already queen, but she's not been crowned. He, despite her saying you will not raise the Eucharist, raised it, and I mean literally raised it, and she stormed out. So anyway, there must have been some sort of negotiation, reconciliation, and I think he does do the actual ceremony. But you can imagine this is going to be so noisy. Like I said, there's people, there's the residents of London, but people will have come in because there's always a threat risk of the plague kicking off a bit, which would have been a good reason why actually to have your coronation in January when it's colder, when it's usually a bit more subdued. The disease is more subdued. So that is That's interesting. Um, but yeah, so you've got people coming in from outside as well. So it's going to be really noisy, really excitable. The roars of the crowds uh, were uh, compared to the sound of the ordnance being fired at the Tower of London. Whether that's an exaggeration or not, it gives you the kind of idea as to how loud these crowds are. Um, there's music, there's obviously the visual in terms of the pageants, but it's paintings, and then there's Elizabeth herself being carried in a litter with a canopy over the top. The only one under a canopy or being carried, so she stands out. She's the focus of attention. Um, uh, so I wanted to say there's oh, do I have it here? There is a little bit about the pageants themselves. Um, so the first one is concerned with her lineage, her on earth lineage, not back to Adam and Eve and Caesar and all that. And it's all to do with uniting the houses of Lancaster and York, which of course was the theme of her grandfather Henry VII's reign. And this emphasized Elizabeth's lineage, like I say, focusing on that unity, the peace she's going to bring. That is a theme that continues throughout. If you've ever seen the Armada portrait, or if you ever look at any portraits and she's sat side on almost, maybe at a 45-degree angle, and behind her will be stormy skies or stormy seas or something. And the view in front of her is sun, peaceful. With Elizabeth, the storms, everything is behind us. It's peace and unity that's to come. And in the case of Lancaster and York, that's her grandfather and her grandmother, Henry VII and Elizabeth of York, who've done that by uniting in marriage. Her father was the one of, because obviously Arthur was the eldest son, but the personification of that unity. And it goes on to show her parents together. Now, this has been considered at some points as, oh, that's a bit, wow, Anne's not been spoken about in polite circles for a very long time. It's required. It has to be the case. Elizabeth can't be queen if her mother was not the queen, was not the wife of the king. So it, I suppose, kind of neatly neatly ignores what happened to Anne and Elizabeth, of course, herself. The yeah, sorry. I don't really know why, Jack, you're interested in listening to something about Elizabeth. This is no, like, I've done videos actually about fangirling quite recently. Not fangirling, just talking about it. So yeah, so that that depiction of Anne is sort of has been seen in past in when people are discussing the coronation procession as sort of a bold move, but actually no, it's not, in that her daughter's on the throne now. So talking about Anne is clearly going to be not just okay to do, but it's required, because Elizabeth's mum has to have been married to her mother has to have married to her father. So the 4 more pageants, one of which has the Bible is going to be presented to Elizabeth by, so the theme of the pageant is time, and Truth is going to hand the Bible to in English, excuse me, to Elizabeth, and she understands what's required of her as they come up. She can see the pageant in the distance, and it's explained, well, Truth is going to give you the Bible in English. or words to that effect. And she says, "Oh, all right then. So and so can go and pick it up for me." And they're like, "No, no, no. Actually, it's going to be lowered down to you on silk. So if you wouldn't mind, can can we just carry on with the procession?" Which she does, and falls back in sort of with following the plan, which is I think that's quite a nice anecdote. Um, Pamela, of course, yes, of course, talk of Anne as queen would now be required. Absolutely. Um, I think so. Pamela asks, has it been viewed as sympathy for her mother or purely political? At this stage, it's not to do with her personal feelings about her mother. It is that her lineage has to be established as legitimate. She has to be established as legitimate. And that's why. And she continues to use her mother's badges, her mother's family's badges, and employ her um, Berlin relatives. We discussed Tracy Borman's book, Anne Boleyn, Elizabeth I, goes into this in quite a lot of detail, and it's so that's definitely worth a read if you're interested. Um, so 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 there's a couple of the pageants. The other one I wanted to mention is the last pageant on the route was one depicting Deborah, and as judge and restorer of the House of Israel, and how she was a female leader among men, and reigned or ruled for 40 years, which is incredibly close and spot on to the amount of time that Elizabeth was going to rule, but obviously they wouldn't have known that at this time. So they are also head on tackling the fact that she's female, and this is fine. This is no problem. This is no problem whatsoever. She's going to use her virtues. She is legitimate. She's part of a continuation of legitimate monarchs, and she is now the new Deborah, I suppose. So interestingly, actually, so tonight, if I just mention History After Dark tonight, we're talking about Boudica, and there is actually some link that Elizabeth tries to make to Boudica as well, but I can't remember what it is. But there's something she's invoking, or someone's invoking on her behalf, this idea of a strong leader in a queen. Melissa asks, she was carried in a palanquin. So I did have the picture, right? This is going to be small, but I will bring it up on. So I apologize. Might be too small for you to see. But she's in what's also called a litter, but you can see it's horse drawn. There's horses at the front, two horses at the front, two horses at the back. Whether or not that was comfy, don't know, but I don't think that was the point, was it? But yeah, so she's in what's sometimes referred to a litter. I haven't heard it referred to as a palanquin, if I've pronounced that correctly. How did other monarchs process from the Tower to Westminster? I would have to know the actual answer to that question. I would, if I'm going to, I don't want to say guess. What's a better word for guess? Anyway, I was going to say supposition. That's not right, is it? But probably on horseback, because remember what I said earlier about the coronation procession. It's supposed to be a display of military might, powerful leadership. So he'd have been on horseback, I think. Yeah, the gold coach used by Charles III, excuse me. Yes, not supposed to be very comfortable at all. Looks amazing though. Speculate. Thank you, Gina. So what else we got here? Yes, Elizabeth Taylor was Walter Fish. That is true. Anaga, and my interview with Hilary Lynn, we talk about I can't remember if it's in the main part of the interview or the bit for the patrons, but we actually talk about the staff around dressing, producing actually the clothing for the Tudor monarchs, right from Henry VII. And we talk about sort of how that is set up. So you might be interested in listening to that as well. So um, so I think it Elizabeth's um, the way she conducted herself and the pageantry, everything did its job according to the very, I suppose, positive review from the man who was writing it, knowing that she would see it. Um, but it was a success, let's say. So the following day, she has her coronation, the 15th of January, at Westminster Abbey, on top of the Cosmati pavement. You would have seen that at Charles III's coronation. It's incredible, the Cosmati pavement. If you go to Westminster Abbey, please do take a little time to have a look at it. And her ceremony, which she had definite input into, was a clever mix of the Catholic and the Protestant, which I think she did uh, in her church attendance anyway. And obviously the coronation is the most important church service that she's going to be involved in. And it is a bit of a reminder of her acceptance speech when she's told she's queen, sort of this is the Lord's doing, and it's wonderful in our eyes. And she says it in, I think isn't that from the New Testament? She says it in Latin, or it's from the Old Testament. She says it in English, whichever way around it is. I think she says it in Latin, and so it must be from the New Testament. So there's this like balance all the time. I haven't mentioned she's only 25 years old when she becomes queen. And when she's crowned in St Edward's chair, she has the same crown as her mother had when she was crowned, which was unusual for the consort, not for the monarch. And there was a mass said, which both in English and Latin. All this treading the line, which, like I said earlier, didn't necessarily. It probably did please the masses. I don't know. I always imagine most people were pragmatic like they are today and just want to get on with their lives. And you've got the kind of people at the extreme who are really annoyed that it's not an absolute this side or an absolute that side. And she'd processed over from Westminster Hall, and she was back to Westminster Hall for the feast. And if you ever get a chance to go to Westminster Hall as well, it's within the Houses of Parliament, and you can get a ticket and go in. If you normally have to pre-book, but do go and visit Westminster Hall if you can. The amount of history that's happened in that place rivals Westminster Abbey itself. It's amazing. So I hope you've enjoyed some of that. If you've got any questions or anything you want to pop, or just carry on the discussion into the comments, you're more than welcome. Tonight, I am back at 8:15 for History After Dark with Dr. Kat and Catherine Ibbotson, and we're talking Boudica. We're on to our history heroes. I would do inverted commas, but since my accident having my finger amputated, it doesn't really work. But anyway, you get the idea. And so our heroes, in inverted commas, are this year's theme, and tonight our second one, Boudica. So we will be discussing that later. If you can join us, that would be great. We're history_after_dark on YouTube. What else did I want to say? So yes, just a reminder that next week I'm not here. I'm out on my travels because I'm doing some research trips ready for putting together some 2025 tours, some really exciting new ones. If you want to get behind the scenes details, then patreon.com/British history, and I will be revealing what tours I'm looking at doing. For everyone else, you can just guess, I suppose, because I will be sharing pictures from where I'm going. Um, and just before I go as well, so Anaga says Elizabeth had enough dresses to wear a different one for 10.5 years. Well, no, but you're going to have to wait for Ilari's uh, interview to come out to find the answer to that one. You are all so welcome. Thank you for joining me. And I will see you hopefully tonight, or like I say, follow me for pics and stuff of where I am next week. And then I will see you back here for the live the week after that on Wednesday. All right. So thank you. So poisonous dresses and Arga came up as well. You're just going to have to join my Patreon. I'm afraid that is the way it goes. That's where the answers to that are. So thank you so much, everybody. I will see you all really soon. Bye.